team are present. The jury is not present. Who's the defense, or who's the state calling this afternoon?
After we're finished with this witness, we have Jeff Moberg and then Cassandra and Clan.
Are you able to estimate yet when you think you're likely to conclude your case in chief?
I think likely Thursday.
All right. So we are moving at a fairly quick rate. Let's talk about these motions. One of them may be relevant this afternoon. The motion in limine regarding the questioning of police. Has the defendant have a chance to review that motion?
I did get a chance to review it, Your Honor.
Can you pull the microphone down?
I did get a chance to review it. I did not get an opportunity to discuss it with my advisory team. We were able to have like a 30-second discussion right before we came in. So I would like to have an opportunity to do that before I have to.
I think you said Mr. Did you say Mr. Moffat's testifying this afternoon?
No,
Oh, you didn't.
Moberg.
Moberg,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry, no.
Can I see the witnesses?
So theoretically, she could, if we get to cross of Detective Cassandra in plan, that could become potentially an issue there. I don't know. I only put.
Well, I guess here's the issue is, I don't know to what extent you might have intended on crossing police officers about why you weren't arrested that day, or why your brother wasn't arrested that day, or why it took however long for charges to be submitted, or those types of things. Were those things you were planning on questioning anyone about?
Not exactly in those terms.
In what terms then?
Asking those specific questions, those were not on my list. However, it will become apparent that we were not arrested that day. So I don't foresee it being a problem. I'm not trying to
I think that the timing.
go into detail on that.
The timing of what was happening, how the investigation unfolded as far as timing, who was charged, who wasn't charged, would not be relevant. And I think that's what the state's motion is toward, because I think one of the first witnesses in the case, there was a question about why you or your brother weren't arrested that day, which again isn't relevant because if you go down that path, you could foreseeably open a door into, there's a lot of reasons why the investigation probably took quite a while, that the jury doesn't really need to know about, nor is it relevant for them to determine what did or didn't happen on that particular day that you've been charged with. But I'm just kind of giving you a heads up that I don't think it's relevant. If you think it's relevant and we get to cross of this witness today, and you think you have a question regarding the timing, or who was or wasn't arrested, ask if we can take a break, all right?
Okay, sure.
Then we have, well, let me ask the defendant this. You've subpoenaed Robert Bobby Vallow, apparently was sent that subpoena or served that subpoena for a date that's already passed. Is this, again, someone that you believe has relevant information to your case?
No, Your Honor, that was just an oversight. That was a mix-up of clerical error. So we apologize to him or his family or any distress that caused. That was mixed up with an exhibit. His name was mixed up with an exhibit. It's very difficult on the phone at the jail when they cut me off every 20 minutes. And sometimes the notifications that get to my paralegal and my investigator do not come through clearly.
All right. The court will find that that subpoena, first of all, wasn't effective in the way that it was served out of state on an out of state witness. It sounds like the defendant's withdrawing that subpoena. Can we say that?
Absolutely, you can
All right.
quash it.
So that one's withdrawn. Are there other?
Your Honor, just, I know you filed the state's email. I did have attachments of that on there. If those are part of the record, can we seal that as well? Because obviously it still has Bobby Vallow's information
I've
on it.
only sealed your email and I've sealed the actual 2 subpoenas that we
Okay.
discussed this morning.
Thank you.
Was there another, Mr. Boudreaux was served with a subpoena for this case, is that correct?
That is my understanding, Your Honor.
All right,
Those subpoenas were sent out from OPDS. We turned them into OPDS before you struck that witness, Your Honor. So
okay, so that subpoena is effectively quashed, and as I said, that one would be filed under seal as well. Then we have, let me just check the time here, 1:23. The motion in limine regarding the testimony of the video observed by Janice Cox and Summer Shiflett. Have you had a chance to review that and discuss it?
I haven't had a chance to discuss that with advisory council, and I would like the opportunity to do that, Your Honor.
All right, that's fine. I don't think that's imminent for today.
No.
And then I think we can also take up the state's third motion to preclude later today or sometime tomorrow. Is your next, let's have the witness come back in. I think all our jurors are present, so we can start a few minutes early. Let me ask my staff, they reprogram those headsets? All right, so we'll see.
Okay, this computer, these laptops are unreliable for typing because they tend to move the cursor around and mess up things. So it's supposed to be welcome back, Cat. Okay, let's see. I've been doing a little bit of checking here, and so the I was in the other room for a minute, but I know that Lori just said one of the witnesses was a clerical error. No, I think you just didn't know what you were doing. Nate Eaton has been struck. Brandon Boudreaux has been struck without prejudice, meaning he might possibly be subject to being called if something new comes up. Galadriel or Awen's weighing in.
All right, please be seated. The jury is present. You can continue with your direct examination.
Thank you. When we took our break for lunch, we had just admitted Exhibit 215, I believe. And inside this contained the beneficiary designation form that was filled out by Mr. Vallow. Oops. Wait till we get our Elmo up. Correct. This is the form that we were discussing from the February 26th beneficiary change. Yes, that's correct. So We see that it's signed and notarized.
Correct.
And what this then shows is the primary beneficiary is now Ethel K. Woodcock.
Yes.
And then were there also contingent beneficiaries?
Yes, there were.
What are contingent beneficiaries?
Contingent beneficiaries are listed in the event the insured passes away and the primary beneficiary had predeceased the insured, meaning passing away before the insured. Since the primary beneficiary was no longer living, it would then drop to the contingent beneficiaries to receive the death benefit.
Okay. So if Kay Woodcock had not been around when Charles passed, then it would have gone to Nicholas Charles Vallow and Zachary Chase Vallow.
That's correct.
When a primary beneficiary or a contingent beneficiary is removed from someone's life insurance policy, does Banner Life Insurance call that person up and let them know, hey, letting you know you're not the primary beneficiary
No.
anymore?
No,
Why not?
they're not the policy owner, so they would not be entitled to that information.
So again, the policy owner is the person who can do whatever they want with the policy.
Correct.
On July 15th of 2019, did Lori Ann Vallow call Banner Life Insurance to make a death claim?
Yes.
And was that call recorded?
Yes, it was.
And is that the audio that you listened to before we took our break for lunch?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, if I may publish this? And again, that's just something that's the normal course of business that Banner Life records all of those people
All
calling
of our
in.
calls are recorded, yes.
Claims Department, this is Robin. May I have the policy number?
Sure.
Claim?
Yes.
Okay, one moment, please. May I have the name of the insured?
L. Charles Vallow.
And who am I speaking with?
This is Lori Vallow.
And your relationship to the insured?
He's my husband.
Okay, one moment. Okay, ma'am, I'm just going to need to ask you a few questions so that I can open the claim, and then I can go over the claim procedure with you and answer any questions that you may have afterwards.
That would be great.
Okay, first of all, may I have your daytime phone number, please?
Sure. It's 8.
And what was the date of Mr. Vallow's passing?
July 11th.
And what was the cause of his passing?
Well, he was shot.
Okay,
So I don't know how I want to put that.
okay, all right. And I hate to ask, but is it?
Yeah,
you
I
can
don't-
just say yes or no. Was it a homicide?
No, it was an accident.
An accident. Okay. Okay. And what state did he pass away in?
Arizona.
Okay. Just bear with me for one moment. I just need to pull up a few other things.
Okay.
Are you aware of who the primary beneficiary of the policy is?
It's me.
Okay. And may I have your, I'm sorry, one moment. My computer just went away for a second. Okay. And may I have your current mailing address?
Sure. It's 55.
It's a bit silly to redact the address since they've already padded in testimony.
5249. Okay, ma'am. That is all the information I need to open the claim. What we will do now is review the policy in the file to confirm the beneficiary information and determine the claim requirements that we will need to settle this particular claim. Once we have completed our review, we will prepare a claim packet to send to the named beneficiary once that has been confirmed. And the claim packet can either be mailed or emailed or faxed. How would you like to receive a correspondence?
Email would be great.
Okay, and what is your email address?
It's Lori, Lori.
Okay. All right, so you should receive an email from our office within the next 3 to 5 business days or sooner. It will have the instructions listed. Once you receive the information, if you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to give our office a call, and then we can go from there. Okay, is there anything I can help you with at this time?
That's it, I think.
Okay, ma'am. Well, I'm very sorry for your loss. You take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so we hear in Exhibit 215, that's yourself speaking with Ms. Vallow.
Yes,
And we hear her, you ask her if she knew who the primary beneficiary was, correct?
yes,
And who did she advise was the primary beneficiary?
herself.
We also hear you ask about sort of the cause of death for Charles Vallow, correct?
Yes,
And you asked when there was a pause if it could be, well, after she told you he was shot, right?
yes,
Did you need to know sort of, was it a suicide? Was it a homicide? Was it a,
correct, yes,
and so did you follow up by asking her if it was a homicide?
yes,
And she advised you it was an accident.
correct,
You got a phone number from her, the 808-755-5452 number,
yes,
and her email address, the Lori for Style at iCloud account.
yes,
And then you had verified with her that she wanted to receive any correspondence by email, correct?
correct, yes,
And in fact, did you advise her that the named beneficiary would receive information via email then?
correct.
Is it normal when you have someone call in to make a death claim to wait and look up things before you let them know?
Yes, that is our standard procedure.
Okay, so you weren't doing anything weird there. That's just what you guys have to
No.
do. So what does Banner Life do to verify that that person that Lori Vallow was the beneficiary?
We review everything on the policy file in the system, as well as any paper document that has come through, such as an ownership change, beneficiary change, anything of that nature during the entire life of the policy since it was issued, to confirm that information, to make sure that we are providing the information to the appropriate party.
Did you in this call know at some point that there was perhaps something incorrect about her being the beneficiary?
Not during the call.
Did you look up afterwards?
Yes.
When somebody calls in to notify that there's been a death and try to get the policy payout, what would normally be required? Do they just have to call in and then you send them a check if their name's on there?
No. We review each policy to determine the claim requirements for that specific claim. They can vary from claim to claim, depending on, the situation with that particular policy. That is why we do prepare a claim packet specific for each claim that has been reported. We provide a packet of information with the cover letter that lists the claim requirements that are needed. And the two things that are always going to be required is our specific claim form that we provide for the beneficiary to complete, as well as a death certificate, which states both cause and manner of death.
Okay. So after Lori Vallow calls saying she's the primary beneficiary of that life insurance policy for her husband, Charles Vallow, did Banner Life Insurance actually determine that she was not the primary beneficiary?
That's correct.
So now that you know she's not the primary beneficiary, how did you notify her of that?
I believe there was a letter that was submitted to her via email as she requested correspondence to be delivered to her in that aspect.
So would the letter tell her who was the primary beneficiary?
No,
Would the letter have told her when that was changed?
no,
It just advised her, would have advised her that she was not the primary beneficiary. Would Banner Life ever tell anyone who the new beneficiary is?
no.
Why not?
We can't release that information. That's personal and private information.
And that's something that just the policy owner has the right to determine.
Correct.
So was an email sent to Lori Vallow on July 18th of 2019 to advise her that she was not the beneficiary?
Yes.
And did she call back to speak with you about the issue?
Yes.
And was there sort of a back and forth of phone tag before you were able to finally speak with her?
Yes, I believe she left a voicemail for me as I was unavailable. I returned her call and I believe I had to leave her a voicemail. And then she did call me back and we were able to connect at that point.
Okay. Aaron, if I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 280. And if you can listen to that and see if you recognize that as yourself and Ms. Vallow again from the July 18th of 2019 conversation. Maybe you can just let us know when you have heard and recognized that as the July 18th of 2019 call.
Yes, I do recognize the phone call.
Thank you. Your Honor, the state will move to admit Exhibit 280.
280.
280.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
280 is admitted.
And if we may publish that.
Claims Department, this is Robin. May I have the policy number?
Sure.
Okay, do you have the policy pulled up? Who am I speaking with?
This is Lori Vallow. I'm returning your call.
Yeah.
I missed you.
Okay, no problem. Let me just get all of this information up. Okay, so in your voicemail, you stated that you had something that stated you are the beneficiary of the policy.
Right. So I have the original policy where I was the beneficiary, the sole beneficiary, and then we changed the policy to where I was 80% and we added two people, the Porches, who invested in our company for each 10%. And that's the last one I have. That's the last update that I have. So can you tell me when that was changed again? I mean, I know my husband is the agent on record, so he can change it. He's the owner.
Okay, I don't see anything regarding the second change that you said. I don't, and with those percentages, I don't see anything at all with you as 80% at any time.
Okay, so
but
maybe that's something he just told him he was going to do. That's just a handwritten copy I have that I found. So.
Okay, so well, I really can't give too much information, but I can tell you that the beneficiary was changed in March of this year.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what he was doing since we have 5 kids and we've been married for 15 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I know he owes a lot of people money, and I was worried if I got money, they'd be coming after me for money.
Right, no, I understand that.
But now I will be with none. So, but did he change it to one person or was it several people?
Unfortunately, I can't release that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. No, I know you can't tell. We're in the business. My husband is the agent. He's the agent.
Okay.
So
Got it. Okay.
We deal with this business all the time. So I
Okay.
kind of know how it works, but I'm
Sure.
completely surprised.
Right. I'm
We have our
sure.
7-year-old with autism that we adopted together. So
Oh,
I'm surprised that he would do that without telling me.
well, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, even though it's community
No.
public. I mean, it's his
No,
policy.
this
He
is a
owns it.
contract that we have with the insured, exactly. So he's able to make any
Right.
changes, during the lifetime of the policy.
Well, can I check? I mean, I have a policy, a $2 million policy on me. And since he's the agent, would he have been able to change the beneficiary on my policy?
Not if he was the agent. He would have had to have owned the policy, but I can certainly check.
But if he
Let
would
me-
have signed my name, could he have done that? I wonder.
I mean, I don't, I would hope that wouldn't happen, but let me just pull up. Okay, let me just take a look and see what I can find on you.
Just under Lori Vallow. It would be under Lori M. Vallow. We have a $2 million policy on me, but I'm not even sure it's with Center Life.
I'm not showing that it's with us.
Okay. It
yes,
might be Life of the Southwest. We work with several companies. but
right.
I could call them and I'm just asking the question, like, I could call them and ask them and make sure the beneficiary is who I say. I mean,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
was
I
him,
would. I mean, if
so-
you have a concern of that nature, I certainly would call and check on your own policies if you have concern
Right.
if something may have happened.
Well, and I would have to change it anyway because he was the beneficiary as far as
Correct,
I know on
yeah.
my policy.
Right. So you would definitely want to update that at this point. And,
Because what happens, like if something happened to me, say today, and it's under him and he's deceased, what happens to that policy?
well, if there's not every contract's different, but I mean, more than likely, if there was not a contingent beneficiary named, it would go to your estate.
To their estate.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if there's, if there's a contingent beneficiary name, then it would go to that person.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, thank you. I just needed that information.
Okay, no, not a problem. All right, you take care.
Okay.
Mhm.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
in this call, we hear yourself again with Miss Vallow,
Yes,
and we hear her telling you that her husband left her with 5 kids to care for, right?
yes,
And she told you that she understands how life insurance works, right?
correct.
That she and her husband run this business about it, right?
Yes,
But then she asks you if an agent would be able to change who the beneficiary was.
correct.
So she didn't really understand it.
I felt that she did not understand it fully.
And again, she told you she understood how this all worked, but then she asked you what would happen if she died. At this point, who would get, her money since her husband had been her beneficiary.
Yes, she did.
So you had to advise her of the fact that if there were contingent beneficiaries, they would get it.
Yes,
Ultimately, did Banner Life Insurance have any insurance policy with Lori Vallow?
no, she did not hold any coverage under Banner Life.
When she was talking to you, at one point she asked you or said, there's nothing you can do about that, right?
Correct.
And there's nothing you can do to change that. That is something that the owner is able to do,
Correct. We could not make any changes.
regardless of if you feel bad for someone.
Exactly.
Is it awkward for you when you have to talk to someone who thinks that they were the beneficiary and learns they're not?
It can be, yes.
Was that your last interaction with Lori Vallow?
To my recollection, yes.
Who did Banner Life Insurance Company ultimately pay the $1 million policy to?
To Mr. Vallow's sister, Kay Woodcock.
And before the insurance company, before Banner Life would pay that out to Kay Woodcock, did you actually have to call and verify with the police that she was not involved in the homicide or the murder of Charles Vallow?
Yes, that's correct.
Questions, Your Honor?
Excuse me?
No questions.
All right, are there any questions for this witness from any member of the jury? I don't see any. You can step down, thank you. State can call its next witness.
Thank you.
All right, sir, come on right up here and right in front here and be sworn in.
Jeff, Jeff, over, MOV, Archie.
Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, you're gonna have a seat. Just walk around the court reporter, have a seat to my left.
Thank you. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Moberg. I'm a forensic scientist with the Arizona Department of Public Safety in the Firearms and Toolmark Unit.
How long have you worked there?
I've been with DPS since February of 2013. I've been assigned to the Firearms Unit since October 1st of 2018.
Can you tell us about your education and training to work in the area of firearms identification?
Sure. Part of the hiring standards for the DPS Crime Lab is I do have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Arizona State University. My specialized firearms training is I attended the National Firearms Examiner Academy hosted by the ATF in Laurel, Maryland. The academy consists of 4 phases. It's approximately a year long, with phase 1 being research and history of and all of the techniques that go into it. Phase 2 is a full on-site 17-week training experience in Maryland, practicing exactly what it is that we do. Then we go into practical examinations, meaning I'm doing competency tests and proficiency tests throughout the summer and preparing a research project, which in phase 4, I will present and conduct mock trials.
Do you have ongoing training as well?
We do. Every year we're offered the opportunity to attend SHOT Show, which is the firearms industry trade show in Las Vegas every year. There's also the Association of Firearms and Toolmark Examiners meeting once a year, which is our annual training. It is nothing but peers within my discipline doing seminars and presenting on findings for various cases and various new technologies coming out.
And in DPS itself, is there any type of QAS or means to ensure that all of the firearms examiners are continuing to perform appropriately?
Absolutely. After the training, we are all given a competency test. We have to demonstrate our ability to do the job. So it's a very complex test consisting of all of the disciplines that we do: toolmarks, firearms, serial number restoration, various other aspects of my job. But then every year we're giving a proficiency test from an outside source, so we're testing our continued or demonstrating our continued competency within the field.
So I want to start by asking you just some generic questions about how a semi-automatic handgun works.
So a semi-automatic gun, meaning a semi-automatic means that it is designed to fire one round with a single pull of the trigger, but it's also meant to cycle the firearm. And what I mean by cycle is the process of loading a firearm means introducing a magazine, particularly in a semi-automatic, which contains a number of cartridges. Cycling it means pulling the slide back and allowing it to go forward. When that happens, it strips off one of the cartridges from the magazine and loads it into chamber. So we call that chambering. At that point, it is ready to fire. When the trigger is pulled, the firing pin is released on a striker type system. It's a spring-loaded firing pin, or a hammer type system where it's a weighted hammer that goes in and strikes the firing pin to hit this back of this cartridge to ignite the round. It then begins, the pressure builds up within that cartridge, expels the bullet down the barrel, but that same amount of pressure is also working to push it back. So it pushes that slide rearward, so it starts to move it back, unlocks the barrel, lets it go all the way back, and then it comes forward and loads the next one.
So I'm going to put up, first, I have Exhibit 76 here. Is this a semi-automatic handgun?
Yes, it is.
And then I'm going to put 85 in here. Is that what a live round looks like?
A live round, or we call it a cartridge, it's just a single unit of ammunition, consists of the cartridge case, primer, powder, and projectile.
So when a handgun is used and the trigger is pulled, we have a projectile that goes out to the barrel of the gun. What happens to the rest of that cartridge or live round?
So the rectangular portion on top, the black portion of the slide that's on top, that whole thing moves. So it will actually, when the cartridge is fired, the pressure of that cartridge will force that rearward, and it opens up that chamber so that the expelled cartridge can be ejected, the cartridge case will be ejected, and the new one can be loaded in via the magazine. The very bottom here where the kind of the hand is grabbing at the bottom is where the magazine is inserted.
So, exhibit 77, is this where you're talking about where the cartridge is going to eject from?
That is actually showing the side of the barrel that which houses the chamber, but that section opens up and that is where the ejection takes place.
So you had talked about this in some of the different jobs that you do as a firearms analyst. When a person fires a semi-automatic handgun, are there any sort of identifying tool marks that might be left on the projectile or the bullet?
Absolutely. All of that pressure that builds up and is pushing the cartridge case back, it is resting against what we call the breech face. The breech face has a hole in it where the firing pin comes through and it strikes the primer. Primer is just that little button in the center of the cartridge. It's actually a very volatile compound that ignites the powder charge instantly. So all of that pressure builds up and presses against that breech face. Being a semi-automatic, as it cycles back, the barrel has to unlock. So it moves slightly back, but then as it unlocks, it drops down. And as it drops down, that cartridge case is scratching up against the surface of that breech face, imparting all kinds of marks that we use for comparison purposes.
When the projectile itself is fired out the barrel, are there any tool marks left on that?
Yes. So when the bullet is being pushed out of the barrel, through the barrel, all of that pressure is pushing it through. A barrel is rifled. Now, rifling is a pattern of lands and grooves that are in a rotational pattern that impart the spin on there. All of that pressure causes the back end of that projectile to expand and to fill that void. So as it's going through, it's dragging along the inside of the barrel, picking up any of the imperfections from the manufacturing process that are there, similar to a fingerprint. So when it comes out, we're able to look around there and you can see the pattern of the rifling all the way around the bullet and the individual striations or scratches on the surface coming from the inside of the barrel.
So if you are provided with a gun, casings, and projectiles, are you able to determine in any way if those casings or projectiles were fired from a specific gun?
Yes, and we do that by doing what we call a comparison. So we go ahead and we take that fired evidence and we're going to look at it. We want to verify that there's markings on there that we can use for comparisons. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to test fire this firearm. I'm going to collect those test fired cartridge cases and projectiles if need be, and I'm going to do a comparison side by side on my comparison microscope. It's just a high powered microscope that allows me to see two things simultaneously side by side at the same magnification. So I'm going to have them side by side and try to line up those scratches and marks that are left on there from the machining process to the next.
So when we're talking about a barrel, you said there's like lands and grooves in there. Is that alone enough for you to identify if a projectile was fired from a specific gun, or are you looking for more specific, unique characteristics from each gun?
So each one, we start with what we call class characteristics. The class characteristics are those that are pre-designed before manufacture, such as what caliber is it? Is it a 9mm? Is it a 45, 40, whatever it may be? Then we're going to look at how many lands and grooves are there. If there is, maybe there's 5, maybe there's 6, maybe there's 8. All of that we use as an initial screening. Can this come from this gun? Say I have a gun that's a 9mm and I have a 45 bullet. That's not possible. So it's an automatic rule out. But those imperfections from the manufacturing process are what we use, and how the scratches translate into there are very unique to those barrels.
So you said you test fire the weapon. Why do you do that? What are you using that for?
Well, when a case like that comes in, whenever we receive a weapon, we first and foremost, we want to verify, number one, that it's safe and unloaded. Number two, that it's actually operational as a weapon. So we're verifying that it can fire and it works as designed. but then I'm also using that time. I document the condition of it as I received it. I document any of the features that are on there, such as in this particular case up here, we have a brown and black gun. That's one of the notes that I would have on there.
When you are doing this comparison and looking for these unique characteristics that you may see from the tools or the actual combustion of this, are there different levels of interpretation or conclusions that you're able to reach during this comparison process?
Yes, when we're doing a comparison, we're first and foremost looking for marks that recreate. So the different levels of opinion that I can form at the end is I can identify it. I can say this piece of fired evidence was fired from this gun. I could say this piece of evidence was not fired from this piece of gun, or this particular gun, excuse me. Or if there's just none of those marks that are reproducing or an insufficient amount of marks for us to actually compare, we can actually go out inconclusive, meaning I'm not sure whether it was or not.
So I'm going to have my paralegal go up to you with a few items here. It is exhibits 235, 38, 40, 239, and 246. I'm going to let you sort of keep those, and I'm going to start with 246, the handgun.
Okay.
Were you provided with that gun as part of a request to determine if you could, well, were you provided with that gun?
I was. When we receive evidence such as a firearm, we actually initial, date, and put the identifying information to the case on the firearm. Right here, just underneath the slide on the frame of this firearm is the DR number, our department record number, the item number. So the combination of that DR number and the item number is our unique identifier to track that piece of evidence. And then my initials and date.
Were you provided with a couple of casings, 238 and 240?
Yes, I was. And again, when I received these, when we receive evidence such as this fired casing here, which is 240, we initial and date the day we receive it. So it's here. There's my initials and date from when I resealed it. It's currently hiding up. It's actually right up here at the top where I initial and dated it when I received it.
Okay. And were you also provided with a projectile, if you can look at 235 and 239? And I believe you only had one of those.
That's correct. There's the one bullet I received right underneath our unique tracking. We barcode everything. It's got our department record number, item number. I initial and dated it as I received.
And which number was that?
This is item 239.
Thank you. What were you asked to do with these items?
This particular case, I was asked to compare the cartridge cases and the bullet back to the firearm.
And that's the firearm that we see here in Exhibit 77, what we see as 246.
Yes, it is.
All right. So starting with this, what can you tell us about the gun itself? What is the caliber? What is the brand of that?
The firearm is a Springfield Armory XDM 45 caliber semi-automatic pistol.
And so when we talk about 45 caliber, what does that mean?
45 refers to just the size of the bore. In this particular case, it's a 45 auto caliber, so or 45 ACP, common to most 45s made today. But that's actually the measurement of the bore.
Were you able to, when you looked at you told us you often look to see just initially, do these all match together? When you looked at the caliber of those casings that you were given, did they match with the 45 caliber?
The two cartridge cases I received were Fiocchi brand 45 auto caliber cartridge casings.
Okay. Now, what about the projectile, the bullet that you're given? Is there a way for you to determine if that is consistent with a 45 caliber, being fired from a 45 caliber handgun?
Yes, so when we receive a bullet like this, I'm going to go ahead and measure the diameter across the fired bullet to achieve that. And it measured, I don't know the exact number, but it's approximately 0.45 inches.
Now, when you first were handed the gun, you said you'd make some notes about that. Did you note anything about it as to whether or not the gun appeared to have been previously fired at some point?
The only notes that we take is we do look down the barrel of the gun. When what I'm looking for is I'm mainly safety purposes. I want to make sure there's no obstruction, because if I fire it and there's an obstruction, could be catastrophic failure of the firearm. But I'm also looking at and documenting the rifling. And when we look down a barrel, we can see, I would notate that it's slightly fouled barrel or whatnot, meaning that there's powder particles and or traces of bullets going through the firearm.
So that would mean it was consistent with having been fired at least.
Correct.
So you talked about test firing. Did you test fire this gun?
I did. I test fired this particular firearm into a water tank. I used the water tank because we wanted to collect projectiles for comparison purposes, and the water tank allows us to do that without damaging the bullets.
What kind of ammunition do you use? How do you determine that?
So first and foremost, we would like to use like ammunition. So this was Fiocchi brand ammunition. We hopefully would have some of that in our reference collection. However, I did not, so I would grab the next closest type of ammunition. I believe it was Winchester that I used in this particular case, that has the same exact type of primer, the same exact type of casing, and the same exact type of projectile.
When you talk about the same exact type, are you talking about like the metals, or what are you talking about?
For instance, the bullet in this case is a copper jacketed round nose full metal jacket. So I would look to test fire a copper jacketed full round nose bullet.
Okay. So when you test fired this gun, did you know anything with regards to the functionality of it?
I noted that it functioned as designed. I did test fire this by hand chambering. I didn't try a magazine in there because one wasn't submitted with it, but it operated with no problems.
Okay. How many times did you test fire it?
We collect a minimum of 3. In this particular case, I only did fire it 3 times. That's all that I needed.
And so each time you're having to put a bullet in there and pull the trigger each time.
That's correct.
If you'd had a magazine, would you still have had to pull the trigger each time to fire it?
Yes, it operates still semi-automatic, so the trigger would have to be pulled each time to fire a cartridge case. I just wouldn't have to reload one into the chamber each time.
So once you created these test fire, let's start with cartridges, did you attempt to compare those to the ones you were provided, exhibits 238 and 240?
So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to collect my test fires, and I'm going to compare them to each other. And why I'm doing that is I want to make sure that there's marks on there that reproduce over our test fires. If there's no marks reproducing, how would I be able to compare it to the evidence? From there, once I determine that it's a sufficient, and I do photo document all of my comparisons, once I figure it's sufficient for an identification there, I'll go ahead and do a comparison to the unknown evidence and make my opinion based on that comparison.
So the test fires that you have, you look to make sure that those are creating each time the same, both class characteristics and individual characteristics.
Correct, yes.
And the class being sort of the generic ones that every type of Springfield might create.
Correct, yes.
And these individual ones are characteristics that are specific and unique to this weapon.
Correct. They're from use, abuse, cleaning, anything like that, and the individual manufacturing of each component.
When you compared those 2 cartridge casings, 238 and 240, to the test fires that you created from exhibit 2, .46, the handgun, were you able to reach any conclusion? Also, this Springfield semi-automatic 45 caliber handgun,
That's correct.
this Springfield semi-automatic 45 caliber handgun.
That's correct.
Did that end your work in this case?
That ended my analysis from this case. From then, I go ahead and I take all of my notes. The entire process I'm photo documenting. So when I opened this up and I was documenting the condition as it's receiving, I'm also taking photos. When I'm doing the comparison, I'm also taking photos of the evidence side by side and any kind of areas of interest that I'm looking at. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and document my opinion and my results on our worksheets. I'm also going to print out all of my photos. I am then going to take all of that evidence. I'm going to hand it to another trained examiner. That other trained examiner, without looking at my results, is going to take all of that evidence and do a comparison himself. And then he'll form his own opinion and then verify that it matches or is similar to my results.
And was that done here?
Yes, it was.
Did that alter in any way your opinion?
Not at all. He was in agreement of my results.
When you talk about the photo, so in your report, you're actually showing all of those characteristics that we've talked about so anyone else could later look at them and see how you reached your conclusion.
It's the photo documentation it's just a snapshot of one portion of the comparison, but yes, a trained examiner should be able to look at them and understand what exactly I was looking at.
Okay, so ultimately your conclusion was both those cartridge casings and that projectile that you were provided was fired from the gun you were provided.
That's correct.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Cross-examination.
I just have a couple questions, Your Honor. Mr. Boberg, when did you receive the request to test this firearm?
It was early March of this year.
So March 2025?
Yes.
And then how long after you received the request did you test the firearm?
I was notified that the request was coming in a couple of days. I received the evidence on a Wednesday, which my week wraps up on Thursday, and I did all of the work on that the following Monday, and the report was put out by Tuesday morning.
Okay, do you know what the date that Tuesday report was put out by?
I don't know the exact date. If you'd like, I can refer to my notes and give you that exact date.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. Go
Is
ahead.
that okay?
So the report was authored on March 4th of 2025. The evidence was received in our property and evidence unit on 2/26 of 25, in which I also received them on that 2/26 of 25 and returned them to our evidence room on the 4th of March.
Okay, thank you. And who requested you to do this test on this firearm? Where did your request come from?
This particular request was made from a detective who reached out to me via email explaining could I assist him with a rush. I passed it through my supervisor, who allowed me to contact the detective and have the evidence submitted. And then it was assigned to me because the request was sent directly to me.
Do you know what detective that was?
Detective Duncan.
And then who did you send your report to?
Once I'm finished with my analysis, my report is then reviewed by another examiner and then a supervisor to make sure that it's all technically correct, and then admin, and then they're electronically released to Detective Duncan.
Okay, and then you said you had done some photo documenting. Were those photos attached to this report?
They were attached to all of my case notes, yes.
Okay, so there's a report, case notes, and then the photo documentaries?
It's all part of, the notes and the photo documentation is all one.
And how long do you think that report was total?
Oh, it's roughly 13 pages total, 13, 14 pages with the actual report.
Okay. Thank you. So you fired the firearm 3 times, is that correct?
That's correct.
In your testing?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. And then if you were, did you point it all in the same direction when you fired?
When I did my test firing, I was firing into a water tank. The water tank has it's approximately 10-inch thick stainless steel tube with a rest inside of it that I fire it into. So it stays in one place and fires at a specific angle into the water so that I'm not striking anything or being unsafe in any way.
And what's your distance at that point?
Oh, approximately a foot.
Oh, just a foot away into the water tank?
Into the water. Yeah.
Okay. And then did all of the casings go into the exact same place, like close to the same place?
So around the inlet tube that we shoot into, we have a big net that catches the cartridge cases.
So you can't really tell where they land then, I guess, because the net catches them? Is that what you're saying?
It's land as far as they kind of shoot out of the gun and then get caught by the net.
Okay, so they don't land on the ground and roll to the close
No.
to each other. Okay. But you kind of got a feel for this gun because you shot it, right?
I did.
So if you were to shoot the gun straight and then move 40 degrees to the right and shoot it again, do you think that the casings would end up in the same area?
Objection as to speculation without foundation of,
He shot the gun, Your Honor. I was
Hold on,
asking his
hold on,
opinion.
Hold on. He can answer if, first of all, if he understands the question.
If I may clarify.
Sure.
So you're asking if I point a weapon, say this way, and then turn this way.
Correct.
Okay. I can't answer that.
Go ahead.
I would expect the cartridge case to be slightly different from the very first one, but not much, depending on what interacts with it in its flight path. Did it bounce off of something? What's the floor type? What is, or whatever it hits first? I couldn't say without knowing any of that.
Okay. So would it be safe to say that the casings would end up in the same place if you didn't move and you fired 2 shots? They should end up close to the same location.
Again, it really depends on what is around, because typically when a semi-automatic firearm is fired, the slide comes back and the cartridge case ejects up and to the right. So if you moved slightly, you're changing that angle slightly. So it could be slightly different. It could be in the same location, depending on how they bounce and roll.
Okay. So if you fired the gun and and the casing ricocheted off the wall, but then you moved the gun and fired it again somewhere else, it could miss the ricocheting of the wall altogether, right?
Again, without knowing the scene, I couldn't say.
Okay. So in your report, I don't want to simplify it because I know that you are a scientist, but is it basically saying that this gun, that those casings came from this particular gun?
My exact wording would be very similar to that. It would say items, whatever the unique identifier is, were identified as having been fired from item, which is the gun.
Okay. This particular gun, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And then you would say that those projectiles also came from this particular gun. Is that correct? Okay. And then, and this testing was done this year on March 4th, is that correct?
March
Right.
4th is my report date, meaning all of the analysis is completed and it is done. At that point, my analysis was actually conducted on the 3rd.
Okay. Okay, no more questions, thank you.
Redirect.
which side did the casings eject from on this Springfield?
On this particular Springfield, the ejection port is angled to the right and up.
Okay. So in order well, let me ask you this. When casings are ejected and you're not attempting to move your arm or the gun, do they always land right in the exact same spot?
They do not.
Do they bounce and roll?
They do. Again, it's a very violent action. That slide is moving very quickly. A lot of times the cartridge case is spitting, so they could tumble through the air and again, bounce off of anything such as the floor, walls, anything around.
So even as each time you pull the trigger, if you're trying your hardest to keep it as still as you can, does that mean the casings will land exactly right next to each other?
No, they won't.
Where the casings land, does that depend on multiple factors?
Absolutely.
So the type of flooring or ground would be one thing.
Any kind of intervening objects, type of flooring, if it lands on grass, it's probably going to stick or stop, or if it lands in carpet or tile, wood, all bounces differently.
If it bounces off a wall, that would impact where it might land.
Yes.
So having fired guns multiple times, semi-automatics, at your best in trying to keep them together, are they maybe grouped in a general area together?
Typically, when we're firing multiple rounds repeatedly, they tend to generally land in like kind of a pool area. It's a generalized area.
And in a situation where a gun may be slightly moved, that cantering of a gun, can that change the location of the casing itself?
Absolutely. I mean, it's designed as it's designed, it will eject up and to the right. So, I mean, if you turn it this way, it's up, could change dramatically, however you're angling it or turning it.
When you are talking about casings and where they land, even if you go and see them, are you able to look at them and say that was from shot number 1 or that was from shot number 2?
Oh, no, we just generalize an area of where a shooter might have been.
And again, that's just because they're landing at best in a pool area, even if you're trying to shoot as straight and uniform as you can.
That's correct.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
All right. Any questions for this witness from any member of the jury? I see at least one coming down. All right, I have a question from a juror. Where would the casings go if the gun was held sideways?
Just for clarification, sideways either way.
Why don't you tell us for either way?
So if I was to cant it sideways and the butt was down, it could potentially go up and fall to the left side because of the way the gravity would be. However, if you turn it this way, it's angling it further down. And again, it depends on how it hits the ground, what it can bounce off of.
All right, any other juror questions? Not seeing any follow-up from the defense based on that question?
No.
State?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. State can call its next witness.
Thank you.
All right, come on right up here in front and be sworn in.
Hi, can you spell your name for the record? Sandra, C-A-S-S, and you are Y-N-C-O-A. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Cassandra Anglon. I'm a detective with the Chandler Police Department in our robbery homicide unit.
Can you tell us about your career with the Chandler Police Department?
So next week, I will have 24 years at the department. Started in patrol, graduated through the Phoenix Police Academy. I have no prior, all my experiences with Chandler. Started in patrol, I worked there a couple years and then was selected to move into a newer unit they created, which was more of a general investigations unit. Worked assaults, burglaries, thefts, kind of entry level detective type cases. We had a reorganization with, I'd been in that unit about a year, year and a half, and that unit morphed into our family violence unit. So at that point, my cases became primarily physical child abuse cases, some missing person type cases, and then the majority was domestic violence, assaults, aggravated assaults, things like that. Worked in that unit for a couple years and then moved into our narcotics and organized crime unit and worked in that unit for about 5 years, doing primarily large scale narcotics investigations. In September of 2009, I was selected and moved into our robbery and homicide unit. And I've been in that unit since September of 2009, where I am now.
As part of your job, are you called out to respond to scenes?
Yes.
And what are your normal working hours?
So we work 4 10s, so 4 10-hour shifts a week. There are 6 people in our unit. So I am one of the 3 that works Tuesday to Fridays, and then the other half of our unit works Monday to Thursdays. But there is one detective in our unit that's on call all the time. And then depending on the scale of the case, the on-call is responsible for being available to come in off hours. But depending on the scale of the case, they'll call in additional detectives to help, sometimes supplementing from other units within the department, depending on the case.
Were you working on Thursday, July 11th of 2019?
I was.
And where were you located? Where's your office?
So my office is at our main precinct, which is in downtown Chandler. But that day I was not in the office. I was driving to kind of a community event that was in West Chandler.
Were you asked to respond to a scene at 5531 South Four Peaks Place in Chandler, Maricopa County, Arizona?
I was.
Why were you asked to respond to that house?
So I had initially heard some radio traffic about a potential shooting that had happened there. And then, so I was aware of the call for service that was going on that patrol had responded to. And then I was contacted by my supervisor shortly thereafter by phone because I wasn't in the station. And they had asked that myself and several detectives respond down to assume that investigation from patrol.
Do you recall approximately when you arrived at that house?
I believe it was right around 9:28, 9:30 is my arrival time on CAD, but it would have been within a couple minutes of that, depending on how significant the radio traffic was that I could get out onto the radio.
In 2019, as a detective, did you have body worn camera assigned to you?
We did not.
So you were not wearing a body cam unit at that time?
No, we did not get ours issued until I believe a couple years later.
Can you describe for us the crime scene when you arrived?
So when I arrived in the neighborhood, it's a gated community. I arrived on the north side of where the residence was. Marked patrol units and uniformed patrol officers were there. There was already yellow crime scene about a house or two north and a house or two south. And I could see several of the initial patrol officers that had responded that were present when I got there.
When you got there, was the fire engine still there?
I believe they were, but there was what we call our care unit. Our CR 288 is the crisis unit. They're a fire personnel, but they respond out to our scenes at our request as well.
Okay. And so that was there.
Correct.
Did you observe any individuals that you learned to be the shooter at the scene?
I did. Alex Cox.
Can you describe where you saw him?
So when I approached the house, I was walking south towards the house. He was seated on a curb. I remember there being like a trash can or something right there. And Officer Krautheim was outside. And I remember seeing him sitting there as I walked past up to a supervisor at the scene.
And can you describe for us the demeanor of Alex Cox when you went by him?
He was sitting on the curb, didn't really appear, just kind of normal, wasn't really agitated or upset. He had what looked like, I think it was a paper towel or Kleenex in his hand. And at one point he reached back and kind of touched the back of his head. But he was just seated, just kind of sitting there.
Did you observe yourself any injuries at that time to his head?
I did not. I didn't have contact with him at the scene at all.
Okay. When you arrive at a scene like that as a detective, what's sort of the process of what does everyone do when you get there?
So initially what we try is that the first one or two investigative type personnel usually will make immediate contact with the supervisor on scene, usually a sergeant or a lieutenant, and try to just kind of do a quick assessment or triage of what's going on. What is kind of the quick initial what happened? Is anybody outstanding? What are kind of the things we need to do? Because then as personnel from like my unit and other investigative units arrive, we can start assigning tasks and roles. We always, by practice, assign a case agent, and then a scene agent is separate. And then any other personnel that get there start assigning tasks, what needs to be done, what needs to happen.
So what is the roles of a detective versus the patrol officers who've been there?
So patrol officers are going to be your first responders. They are going to be the ones that dispatch when you call 911 or the non-emergency number. Patrol is going to come to your house first. They're the uniformed in a marked patrol car. They're going to respond out and do the initial investigation, initial scene safety, initial first aid until it's safe for fire to get there. They're going to be your initial first responders. If the call or event or incident that they're responding to is going to be more significant or more serious, or maybe needs more specialized equipment or investigation, or potentially they might need a search warrant, then you're going to see where detectives are going to get called out to assume an investigation from patrol. So there will be some overlap. And then once we come out and kind of take the investigation over, patrol then gets released from the event, and it will become kind of property of the detectives that come out to assume the case.
Do you have patrol officers still helping things like securing the scene and making sure that, no one is just running up into the house or something?
Absolutely.
While you were on scene, did you notice any other civilians kind of waiting around?
Yes.
Who did you notice?
At one point, I realized that where Officer Krautheim was standing, basically across from the house, it was within the crime scene, that an adult female, Lori Vallow, and then her daughter, Tylee, had at some point got there. I'm not sure exactly when, but I realized that they were standing in the vicinity of Officer Krautheim within the crime scene near a red car.
Did you see the interaction between Officer Krautheim and these two, Lori Vallow and Tylee?
I did from across the street.
When you saw that interaction, did you know who they were at that point?
I did not know who they were. I found out a short time later.
So did Officer Krautheim advise you and other detectives who they were?
Yes,
So you said the female was Lori Vallow.
correct.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point her out and identify what she's wearing?
She's seated at the defense table wearing like a navy blue blazer.
Brandon, may the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
It shall.
Can you describe Lori Vallow's demeanor when you saw her across the street there?
So she was standing, the car they were near was parked along the curb, and she was standing basically in front of the parked car. And Tylee was standing next to her, just kind of appeared to be having this kind of ordinary interaction with Officer Krautheim, just kind of talking to him, didn't seem real animated or emotional. Just seemed very kind of ordinary and kind of nonchalant.
Were any police cars visible at the crime scene?
Yes,
And so there's yellow crime scene tape up.
correct.
So when Officer Krautheim came over, did he talk to you and some other detectives?
He did.
And did he advise you about his interaction with Ms. Vallow and Tylee?
He didn't talk to me about their interaction. He just more identified who they were.
Okay.
And at that point, we had had some discussion about kind of additional roles that had just developed.
So at some time while you're sitting there and you're standing around talking with sergeants and whatnot, is that when you learned who you believe to be the shooter, Alex Cox, was?
Yes,
And at some time while you are again getting these updates, did you learn who the deceased male was inside the residence?
correct.
And who was that?
That was Charles Vallow.
During this time, did it become known to you the relationship between Lori Vallow and Alex Cox?
Correct. They were brother, sister.
And during this time, did you become aware of the relationship between Miss Vallow and Charles Vallow?
Correct. Husband, wife.
After you, or I guess during the time when you were speaking with these officers, were you updated by Officer Krautheim about whether or not Lori Vallow knew her husband was dead?
No, I had talked to my sergeant actually about speaking with her specifically about doing what we refer to as a death notification.
Well, let me go back. So did you believe that Lori Vallow knew her husband was dead?
I did not.
You thought she had no idea?
I didn't think she knew because she wasn't there when I got there.
Had you been advised that by Officer Krautheim or his sergeant relating to information he had received from Alex Cox that she was not present?
I didn't believe that she was present at the time the incident occurred prior to me speaking with her.
Okay. And that was based upon information that you had obtained from briefings?
Correct.
Okay. Since you thought that Lori Vallow did not know her husband was deceased, what did you do?
So I had a brief discussion with my sergeant, and we agreed that it would be the right thing to do a death notification to her. She is legally his wife. They are married. She would be his legal next of kin. She's standing basically in the crime scene, and I think professionally, it's in delaying letting someone know that their loved one is deceased isn't appropriate. So we made a decision at that point to contact her to do an actual death notification. So it was clear that he was deceased.
So because she's there at the scene, do you just walk up to her while she's standing right there in front of the car to notify her? How do you do that?
No, so her and Tylee were now seated within the care unit that I had mentioned, our CR 288. They have a van, and we utilize it a lot. So they were seated within that van. I had approached the van with my sergeant, and my intention was to try to get her to come out of the van because Tylee was in there with her, so I could have a discussion with her outside of the view of any children. When I made contact with her, we ended up having the conversation with her in the van with Tylee.
So let me ask this. What was her demeanor when you see her in this van?
Pretty much the same as her demeanor before. Not real emotional. She was pretty calm. Didn't seem overly affected.
I think you had used nonchalant previously.
Yeah, it's a good word to describe it.
So how did that notification go down? Were you able to tell her what happened?
So opened the van. I made contact with her. I think at some point I asked her something to the effect that if she would step out of the van to talk to me. And at that point she said that she already knew because she was there, which was kind of a surprise. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. And at that point, I confirmed with her that he had died and he was deceased, and quickly kind of conferred with my sergeant away that at this point her and Tylee are now witnesses to the event and they need to be interviewed, obviously.
So it's normal for detectives to have to make death notifications,
Yes,
and you have made death notifications in other cases.
unfortunately, yes.
And so in this case, you yourself was the one surprised to learn that you didn't have to give her a death notification.
I was.
Did her demeanor change at all when she's telling you that she was there and knew he was dead?
No.
So at this point, now that you know that it's not just a death notification, she now may have relevant information. What happens at that point?
I had made a request of her that we would like to obviously talk to her, and if I could transport them back to the police station. If possible, we like to do the interviews in a more contained environment, obviously one that we can record, and one that's not in the middle of a crime scene. So I had asked if her and Tylee would come back to the police station with me, and I ultimately ended up driving both of them back to the police station.
Is there a special area at the police station that you took them to?
I did. I took them to what's referred to as our FAC, which is our Family Advocacy Center.
What's the difference between the FAC and, maybe what people have seen on TV of just like the cold room with a table and two chairs?
So the Family Advocacy Center is a separate part of the police department. It actually has a separate entrance, and it's designed specifically for like victims of crime. We do forensic interviews of children there. There are not uniformed officers that work within that area. It's designed specifically for like victims of crime. We do use it sometimes, obviously, for witnesses. There will never be like in custody and custodial, like suspect interviews or anything in there. It's a separate section of the police department that's kind of an entity on its own.
So when you're going to interview Lori Vallow, do you have any concept sort of what she saw, what her involvement is at that point?
No,
So when you said you drove her and Tylee to the police station?
I did.
So they left their car at the scene.
They did. They came with me in my city vehicle.
Can you describe Lori's demeanor as you're driving her to the police station?
So obviously I drove, she was in the front passenger seat. Tylee was seated behind her. The majority of the drive, we were actually talking about Tylee. It's a little bit awkward because you're trying not to talk about anything that happened until you can get to the police station. So you're trying to kind of make this strange small talk almost. But we were talking primarily about Tylee and her schooling and such. But we were driving and she was just kind of chattering along as we were driving.
Did she seem stressed at all while she's talking to you?
Not really.
Was she crying or emotional at all while you're driving?
No.
While you were before you left in the car, did she ever try to ask you any questions about how her brother was doing or what's going on with her husband or anything like that?
Not of me, no.
When you got her to the police station, how long did that take approximately?
It's probably a 20-minute drive from the house to where the station is, about,
Was she chatting away the whole time?
for the majority of it.
When you get to the police station, do you separate Lori and her daughter Tylee?
I did.
And was that interview audio and video recorded?
It was.
Was she free to leave at any time?
Yes.
Did you know if she had a cell phone with her when you were interviewing her?
I don't believe, well, she did, she had a phone with her at one point, but she wasn't on it or doing anything.
Did she provide you with a cell phone number when you were talking to her?
In the initial part of the interview, yes. The initial part of the interview is biographical name, date of birth, phone number, address, that type of thing.
Did you ever ask to look at her cell phone?
I did not.
Did she ever offer to show you her cell phone?
She did not.
Did you know at that point, well, let me ask you, had you been inside the scene at that point, inside the house?
So I did not go in the house until later. Prior to me coming back to the scene later, I was never inside the house.
So at that point, when you are first meeting with Lori to driving her there, did you know if she had Charles Vallow's cell phone with her?
I did not know.
Did you sort of assume that Charles Vallow's cell phone would have been at the scene with him?
I did assume that, yes.
So I want to start with, you told us that you asked some basic biographical information. And Your Honor, if I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 186.
Go ahead.
Have you watched that CD, Exhibit 186, previously?
I have, yes.
Is your initial on it to identify that you've watched it?
My initials and my badge number.
And is that to identify that you recognize that as the part of the interview where you're asking Lori Vallow for biographical information.
Correct.
And that shows it's an accurate copy of that portion of the interview.
Yes.
State will move to admit Exhibit 186.
Any objection?
The only objection is to the portion, Your Honor. This is not going to be a full,
It's
just a portion of it.
redacted? Are you saying it's redacted?
This is only one portion of it. We're going to be going through lots of portions of it.
What was the number?
186.
186 is admitted.
And Your Honor, if I can publish it.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know Laura's your first name, right? L-A-U-R.
L-O-R-I.
Okay. And then what's your last name?
Vallow, V-A-L-L-O-W,
And your date of birth?
6/26/73,
And then your phone number?
808-755-5452.
And you live at the house, right?
So in this portion that we see in 186, she gave you a phone number of the 808-755-5452.
Correct.
During your investigation, did you learn that Lori Vallow had more than one cell phone?
I did.
Did you learn whether or not she was employed outside the home?
I don't believe she was.
Did you ever read her Miranda rights?
No.
Why not?
She was not in custody. She was there consensually. And at the time that I was talking to her, I was talking to her as what I believe to be a witness.
Now, did you talk to her about sort of when she moved into the house, some background about her son and Charles and that relationship?
Yes.
My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 187.
Go ahead.
Do you recognize Exhibit 187, again, having your initials and badge number on it?
I do, yes.
And is that marked as clip 2, the portion of your interview where Lori Vallow is telling you about sort of moving into the house and some background on JJ and Charles?
That's correct.
State will move to admit 187.
Any objection?
The objection would be Rule 106, Your Honor, the rule of completeness. We would ask that the whole thing be played,
All right.
the entire video.
The objection's overruled. The exhibit's admitted.
And if we can publish it.
Well, so we moved into this house 3 weeks ago because he offered to get me a house here where all my family is. So we were in Houston. And so he's like, we had decided to separate or whatever. So he's like, well, I'll pay for a house for you and for JJ and whatever, because he's all about JJ. He's never about Tylee, but he's all about JJ. Because we adopted him together. He's his great nephew. We adopted him as a baby. So he was like a drug baby and had all these problems. And so we adopted him as a baby. And so we've been raising him together. And he travels all the time for business. So he's used to just going back and forth. So he's always gone like Monday through Friday. So he came when we first moved in and brought me stuff from Houston, like a U-Haul. And then he hasn't been back. But it's all these threats on my phone all the time, you know, like whatever, all these things. And then he told me,
What kind of threats?
just you'd have to read them to me, but he's always mad at me, right?
Okay.
And he doesn't want a divorce, but I don't like him and don't want to deal with him, so that's just how it is. Like,
So I want to talk a little bit about this portion of your interview with Lori Vallow. She told you about the adoption of JJ by her and Charles, correct?
Correct.
And that JJ suffered from some disabilities.
That's right.
During this part of the interview, did she tell you that Charles had sent some threatening messages on the phone?
She did. She said there were threats on her phone.
Did she ever offer to show you those threats?
She did not.
So she has a phone with her, but she didn't show you anything.
No,
Did she ever explain what she meant?
no.
And we had just discussed that she had given you a phone number of 808, correct?
Correct.
And during that investigation, or this investigation, sort of in the days that followed, did you learn later that most of the communication between Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow was on one of her other cell phones, the one with a 480 area code?
I did.
So even though she gives you a totally different number, that's not the phone that you understood to have the communications between her and Charles.
Right.
Does she also say in that clip that Charles Vallow didn't want a divorce from her?
That's correct.
And did she tell you that she didn't even like Charles
Yes.
and that she didn't want to deal with him
Yes.
and that he traveled to just kind of get away?
Correct.
When you were talking with Lori Vallow, did she tell you that Charles had filed something against her saying she was crazy and asking to limit her supervised visitation?
That's correct.
And did she tell you that sort of in retaliation that she basically stopped talking to him and JJ for 30 days?
Correct. That he was in Houston. JJ was in Houston with Charles.
I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 188. And do you recognize Exhibit 188 as also being signed and have your badge number on that?
Yes.
Meaning you've reviewed it and has identified that as that portion of your interview with Lori Vallow, including those areas of the supervised visitation.
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 188.
Your Honor, we're going to object that the whole interview should be played.
188? 188 is admitted.
And if we can publish it.
Go ahead.
Him, and I didn't file anything or whatever, and then he filed something against me and said I'm only gonna get supervised visits because I'm crazy and blah blah blah, you know the story. And so I just didn't talk to him for like 30 days and let him take care of him and let him see what I've been doing.
So she, I know it got cut off sort of in the end there. She told you that after he filed this paperwork saying she was only going to get supervised visits, that she just didn't talk to him for 30 days.
Correct.
Should we break
All right,
for-
let's take our afternoon stretch break, recess, 15 minutes. Please remember the admonition.
All right, for the jury.
Okay. We've got a break. Lori wants to watch the entire time she was questioned at the police station. I don't think it's going to do her any good. Let me see if we can find anything. Let's see, for a glimpse into the future, we are back in court And detective is on the stand. Daybell is objecting to clips from the interview being played. She insists that she wants the whole interview with police played in full. Each objection has been overruled. That's from Ashley Holden, who I believe is with the local ABC affiliate from down in the Phoenix area. And she's in the courtroom observing. Somebody posts that a John Dellen continues to blame the church for murders instead of, the people who actually committed the murders. Yeah. Little E says the late Tylee Ryan was fearlessly protected over her late Lori Vallow. Let's see. That doesn't make sense. The late Tylee Ryan was fearlessly protected. I think she means protective over the late Lori Vallow Daybell, but Lori isn't late. But her mother wasn't protective over her. Yeah, she's kind of messed up her sentence somehow there. She had her late brother, the late Alex Cox, to kill her too, so she could live on her Social Security from the late Joseph Ryan. Everybody ends up dead around Lori. Let's see. Ashley Holden again says, Daybell then tells police she wanted to know why Vallow was texting her other brother, Adam. She told police she thought they were planning something. I think that's a case of projection. Okay, Ashley Holden says, during the interview, Daybell says that Vallow came back in after putting JJ in the car. Daybell told police that she had Vallow's phone. She says it was on the counter when he came in, and Daybell demanded her then husband show him his texts. And I'm did Lori manage to look at the texts and see that he had been out to dinner with Nancy Joe? Probably riled her up even more. Let's see what we've got on. Another one. Ailey Cavan says, for all we know, the blood on Alex could have been from Charles. Yes, that occurred to me too. He may not have even been injured, but may have, dipped some fingers in Charles's blood and put it on his scalp to make it look like he'd been injured. Okay, let's see what the latest is from Nate Eaton. Lori told Inkland that she asked Charles why he was talking with her brother Adam. Inkland didn't know who Adam was and didn't know he was there texting. They were there texting each other. Inkland didn't know that Lori was in possession of Charles's phone. Inkland didn't know that Charles had flown Adam into Phoenix. Another portion of interview is played. In this part, Lori tells Inkland that about Charles coming back to get his phone. He was screaming at me to give him his phone. He was very worried about what was on his text. I was kind of walking about the house with it so he couldn't get it. He was reaching for it, Lori says on the tape. Let me do a little checking if that is a crime in the state of Arizona, because a lot of states withholding somebody's cell phone is against the law. And Grok has to say, withholding someone's cell phone in Arizona isn't explicitly against the law under a specific statute, but it could be potentially violate laws depending on the context and intent. If withholding the phone is part of a theft, extortion, or harassment, it could fall under Arizona's theft statute, which includes depriving someone of their property or otherwise other related crimes like robbery or coercion. For example, intentionally keeping someone's phone to control or harm them could be seen as unlawful interference with their property rights. I think that definitely fits Lori. Context matters significantly. Courts would look at whether the phone was taken with the intent to permanently deprive, used to manipulate, or part of a domestic violence situation. If it's a temporary act without criminal intent, a parent taking a child's phone, it is unlikely to be illegal unless it crosses into abuse or coercion. And saying, and if it specific situation, domestic violence, blah, blah, blah. Grok is not a lawyer. Please consult one. So, let's see. Lori never said during the interview that Charles started the argument. Lori said she started the argument because she would not give Charles back his phone. Lori said that she was afraid of her husband, invited her brother over, and then when Charles came over, she started a fight by refusing to give him back his phone. So she was looking to provoke him, to give a veneer of motive for self-defense. But, you know, I don't think that self-defense flies when you are provoking the other party. So let's see, how much longer is this break going to be? Okay, roughly 3 more minutes to go. Not much so far post-break. Okay, let's check our docket to see what's going on with Corey Richens. Her trial is coming up at the end of the month. Oops, that was not the right one. Brought up YouTube instead of the court docket. Oh, interesting. There is nothing listed in the next 30 days for Corey Richens, even though the trial is supposed to be starting on the 28th of the month. So interesting. Did they postpone her trial? Let's see. Let's ask Grok. Was Corey Richens murder postponed? Okay, Grok has. Yes, Corey's Corey Richens' murder trial originally scheduled to start April 28th in Summit County has been postponed indefinitely. Delay stems from her defense team's appeal of a judge's decision to keep the trial in Summit County with local jurors rather than moving it to Salt Lake County or drawing jurors from there due to the concerns about media bias and impartiality. On April 7th, 2025, the 3rd District Judge Richard Mrazek granted the defense's request to pause proceedings to allow for this appeal. As a result, no new trial date has currently been set, and the current docket reflects this indefinite postponement. So, well. I guess I don't have to worry. Well, I'm going to say we won't have to worry about Lori's trial conflicting with Corey's, but Lori's trial is going to be wrapping up next week. So, Sean Diddy Combs pleads not guilty to expanded trafficking indictment. Former Colorado deputy gets 3 years in prison for fatally shooting man who called for help. Suspect in Pennsylvania arson attack harbored hate against Governor Shapiro. Huh. 17-year-old Wisconsin allegedly killed parents as part of plot to assassinate Trump. That sounds interesting. Okay, Waukesha, teenager allegedly killed his parents as a part of a plot to assassinate President Trump, federal authorities said in a newly unsealed court documents. Nikita Kapp, 17, called for the assassination of the president and overthrow of the U.S. government in written documents and text messages. Oops, just a sec. We thought something covering. Okay. The alleged killing of his parents appeared to be in an effort to obtain or to attain the financial means and autonomy to carry out the plan. In Wisconsin, the teen faces 9 felony charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of hiding a corpse, according to the online court record and the Waukesha County criminal complaint filed in late March. Federal investigators, meanwhile, are pursuing 3 charges: presidential assassination, conspiracy, and use of weapons of mass destruction, according to the affidavit, which was written by an FBI agent in support of the application.
Thank you. So Detective, when we broke, we had just watched Exhibit 188, a portion of your interview where Lori Vallow was telling you that Charles had filed something against her, saying she was crazy and asking to limit her to supervised visitation. Did you understand or know what that was about at that time?
I did not.
Did you talk to Lori Vallow about sort of Charles coming into town?
Yes,
So you understood that he did not live here in Phoenix?
I did.
And did she talk to you about booking a room for Charles and that he was going to come out and see JJ, his son?
Yes.
If my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 189.
Go ahead.
And do you recognize Exhibit 189, again, that says clip 4 with both your signature and badge?
Yes.
And is that the portion of the interview where you are talking to Lori about Charles coming into town, him traveling and coming here to see JJ?
It is.
State will move to admit 189.
Any objection?
Will object, Your Honor. The defense will on Rule 106 of completion. Ask that the whole interview just be played.
All right. Was it 109?
189.
I'm sorry, 189 is admitted.
And if we could publish it.
The time because he travels for business and the business pays for it, right? So I said, I will book you a hotel nearby.
What does he do?
He works with teachers and their retirement plans, but he goes to them. He
Okay.
mostly works in California.
Okay.
No matter.
What's the full quote? Okay. So she advised that she booked a hotel for him.
So the audio wasn't on initially when that played,
Okay.
but there is a portion in the interview where she does tell me that.
Where she says, I'll book you a hotel.
Correct.
Um, During your interview, did Lori Vallow tell you that Charles traveled a lot for his work?
Yes.
And did she tell you that his travel was an excuse not to care for his son?
Yes, that he was gone a lot.
Did Lori Vallow tell you that she had left Charles Vallow in Texas and moved back to Arizona?
That's correct.
And did she tell you that Charles was still living in Texas?
Yes, in the Houston area.
Did she say that Charles had rented her a house for her and JJ and her daughter Tylee to live?
Correct.
Did you talk to her about whether or not she had an interaction with Charles the night before, on
Yes.
July 10th? And did she advise that it was just limited to a text message?
Correct. Not in person, just via the phone.
Okay. My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 190. And do you recognize that, again, with your initials and badge number,
Correct.
as a portion of your interview where Lori Vallow was telling you that Charles was not at the house that night. He just let her know he'd be over at 7:30 the next morning.
That's right.
State will move to admit 190.
Same objection.
Same objection, Your Honor.
Right, 190 is admitted.
Kind of his macho attitude. And so he came this morning. I was getting JJ ready.
So
for
he
school.
got in last night, but he wasn't at the house last night.
Yeah, I didn't hear from him, except for he texted me and said, I'll be there at 7:30 to pick up JJ.
Okay.
And I was like,
So you understood that she had no interaction with Charles on July 10th.
In person, correct.
But she knew what time to expect Charles the next morning on July 11th at 7:30.
Right.
When you were talking with her, did you talk to her about what time Charles actually showed up?
Yes.
And did she say 7:40, 7:35-ish?
I believe she said 7:35.
My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 191.
Go ahead.
And again, do you recognize Exhibit 191 as having been initialed and have your badge number on it?
I do.
And is that in clip number 6, the portion of your interview where she's talking about what time Charles showed up that morning?
Correct.
State will move to admit 191.
Same objection.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense objects.
All right, 191 is admitted.
And if we can publish.
Go ahead.
so
Do you remember about what time he got there?
he said he'd be there 7:30, but it was more like 7:40-ish
Okay.
or 7:35, I don't know.
Okay.
But I remember thinking, looking at the clock, and he wasn't there at 7:30, and he's usually Mr.
Yeah.
On
Punctual.
time. Yes.
So at this point, you understand that Lori Vallow knew Charles was coming to Arizona,
Correct.
and she knew he was going to show up on the 11th at 7:30 a.m.,
Correct.
and that he was coming there to pick up their son, JJ.
Yes.
Did the defendant talk to you about when Charles shows up, sort of how they get JJ in the car, and that she goes out to the car with Charles and JJ, and then that she ultimately ends up with Charles's cell phone?
That's right.
My paralegal can approach with Exhibit 192. And do you again recognize that with your initials and your badge number?
I do.
Clip number 7, a portion of the interview where you are being told by Lori Vallow that she put JJ in the car, and eventually how she got Charles's phone.
Correct.
State will move to admit 192.
Same objection.
The defense will object to 106.
192. 192.
I'm sorry. The rule 106
Oh.
is the objection. I'm sorry.
Got you. All right, 192 is admitted.
And if I may publish.
Go ahead.
You know, he's just been difficult, so.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I got JJ stuff ready, and he was like, well, and he's like this about timing. He's like, I'm leaving in 20 minutes, because it's like 15 minutes to the school, and like you can't get there early, they don't open the gates until like 8:20 or something like that. And I said, well, why don't you just go now? I don't want him in the house. I'm like, why don't you just go now and take him to Burger King, because that's what he likes for breakfast. And he's very particular about food. Like, he wanted chicken fries for breakfast and a Sprite. Like, and I just get what he wants, because if you don't get what he wants, and it's like on the floor screaming, dragging him, and just go like, and he's big and he's heavy, and it's hard for me to handle that. Anyway, so I said, just go. And so he said, okay. So I gave him a backpack. He got in the car. This is his MO, right? He always leaves something in the house and comes back. He never leaves the first time. I always expect My husband came back into the house, right? So I guess he had left his phone on the counter.
So he initially left with the backpack and with JJ?
So he put them in the car,
Okay.
in the driveway, and then he came back in, right? So I kissed JJ goodbye. He came back in, and his phone was on the counter, and I had his phone. And he was like, "Give me my phone." And I was like, "Why don't you show me your text that you've been texting, blah, blah, blah," you know, whatever. Because he's like acting really weird, like he's plotting something against me. Like, I'm like, why are you even here? Like, what did you come here for? You know, he's been talking to my other brother, and my brother came into town at the same time last night. And I haven't talked to my brother in a while, my other brother. And I was like, and so he was texting him on the phone when he first got to my house. And I'm like, "Why are you texting Adam? Like, do you even talk to him? Like my other brothers?"
So in this portion, Lori Vallow told you that she kissed JJ goodbye and Charles took JJ and the backpack out to the car,
Correct.
and that she went inside and got a hold of Charles's cell phone.
Correct.
And did she tell you that Charles came back inside and saw her with the phone and told her to give it back to him?
That's right.
Did Lori Vallow ever tell you that she gave the phone back to Charles?
She did not.
So Lori Vallow is telling you that Charles is demanding the phone back, and she instead says, "Show me your text messages."
Correct.
We heard previously that Lori Vallow had told you that Charles had taken JJ away from her for 30 days, and so she didn't talk to him, right?
That he had JJ for 30 days and they didn't talk. Yes.
And so now she's telling you she's demanding to know why he's in Arizona, why he came to Arizona. Is that what she said? Why are you even here?
I believe so. Yes.
So Charles had to take care of his son, and now he's here to visit his son,
Correct.
is what
Correct.
she even said.
Yes.
So did she tell you that she had confronted Charles about texting her brother, Adam,
In
in this portion of the interview?
in the portion of the interview, she discusses with me asking Charles why he's talking to her brother Adam.
And were you aware at this time, when you are interviewing Lori Vallow, that Charles and Adam had been texting?
No,
Did you even know who Adam was at that point?
I didn't know who Adam was.
And so, and again, I think you told us you were not aware at that time that Lori Vallow was in possession of Charles Vallow's phone.
Correct.
And were you aware at that time that Charles had flown Adam in?
No.
So you're just kind of hearing this and listening to what she's saying.
Correct.
Did you go into some additional detail about, again, Charles demanding that Lori Vallow give him back his cell phone?
Yes.
I can have my paralegal approach with clip 197.
Go ahead.
It's out of order. Clip 8. Do you recognize Exhibit 197, clip 8?
I do.
And again, did you initial and put your badge number on that?
I did.
And did that reflect, again, another portion of your interview where Lori Vallow is describing to you what is going on when Charles Vallow is demanding his phone back, what she does?
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 197.
Same objection.
Defense will object to playing the whole video, Your Honor.
197.
Yes,
197 is admitted.
and if we may publish.
Go ahead.
And working.
Okay. So this morning he comes back in and.
He comes back in, I wouldn't give him his phone, he was screaming at me to give him his phone. He was very worried about whatever was on his text that he did not want me to see. And So I was just holding it there and he was screaming at me. And I was kind of walking towards around the house with it so he couldn't get it. He's like reaching for it and stuff like that.
So this is the second time that Lori Vallow is telling you that Charles is telling her to give him back his phone,
Correct.
and she is refusing to do so.
Yes.
And she advised that she was walking around the house, right?
Correct.
So he's screaming at her and she's walking around.
Correct.
During this initial confrontation over the phone, does Lori Vallow tell you it's just her and Charles?
Yes.
And so did you ever ask her why she didn't just give the phone back to Charles so he could take JJ to school?
I did not.
During your interview with Lori Vallow, did she tell you at some point that since she wouldn't give Charles back the phone and he's screaming at her, that her daughter Tylee and her brother Alex came out?
She did.
Did she tell you that her daughter Tylee came out with a bat?
She did.
Did she tell you that Tylee sort of poked at Charles with the bat
Yes.
while she and Charles were arguing?
Correct.
And did she tell you that Charles took the bat away from Tylee and Tylee sort of fell back or something?
Correct.
She ended up on the floor.
Correct.
And that Lori then told her to go outside to JJ.
Yes.
Did Lori Vallow ever tell you why her brother Alex Cox brought a loaded gun to her house?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she had asked Alex to come over to the house?
She did.
Did she ever tell you, well, let me say, so when she talked to you, she told you that she had wanted Alex to be there sort of to protect her in case anything went bad, right?
Correct.
So did she tell you why Alex didn't go to the door with her when Charles is pounding on the door being a jerk or whatever?
She did not.
So she didn't explain why the gun was there or why Alex wasn't part of this initial phone argument?
Correct.
Did Lori ever tell you during your interview that Charles started this argument?
No.
During your interview of Lori Vallow, was it always her saying that it was her that started this argument because she would not give Charles back his phone?
Correct.
So she told you that she was afraid of Charles coming over, invited her brother over to protect her, and then she started a fight by refusing to give Charles back his phone.
Correct.
During this interview, did Lori tell you that after Tylee went out to be with JJ, that Charles came at her with a bat?
Yes.
And that she moved into the kitchen and that while she was not able to see what was going on, she hears a shot?
That's correct.
If I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 193. Clip 9. Do you recognize Exhibit 193?
I do.
Did you initial and put your ID on that?
I did.
And is that a portion of this of your interview with Lori Vallow, where she talks about what her brother is doing and Charles is doing, and her walking around into the kitchen with the phone?
Yes.
The state will move to admit Exhibit 193.
Same objection, Your Honor.
All right, 193 submitted.
And if we may publish.
Go ahead.
All right,
outside.
Yeah, she was outside,
And then what happened?
then they got up from that, and my brother had like stepped back, I guess, and then Charles was coming with me at the back, yelling at me to give him his phone still, because I had it in my hand. It was all really quickly. And then when I went around kind of in the circle, then my brother was there.
When you said when you were going around and he was coming at you with the bat, how was he holding the bat?
Just like that, like backwards.
Like he was swinging it backwards? You would have done like
he would have swung it backwards at me, not frontward.
Okay.
One second. So in this clip, she's describing to you how how Charles was swinging the bat at her, correct?
Correct.
And in that clip, does she, or let me ask you this, does she go on to talk to you about whether or not her husband was a semi-professional baseball player?
She did, yes.
And she told you that, again, Charles is holding a bat and yelling at her to give him his phone.
Correct.
And she didn't give him back the phone?
She did not.
Did she talk to you about whether or not she saw the shot?
Yes.
Did she say she saw it or not?
She did not see the shot. She heard the shot.
So she indicated she does not. Did she indicate whether or not she saw her brother pull out a gun?
No.
Did she indicate whether or not she saw her brother go get a gun?
She did not.
Did she indicate how many shots she heard?
She specifically said the shot, as in one shot.
Did you at some point, well, let me ask again. So you had not been into this residence yet.
No.
So when she's telling you she's going around, did you understand what that was?
Not really, because I hadn't been inside. She was kind of describing the kitchen and the room they were in, but I hadn't seen it firsthand.
Okay. When you were talking to Lori Vallow, did you ask her if Charles or her brother Alex had said anything before Alex shot Charles?
Yes.
And did she indicate she doesn't recall hearing that?
Correct.
And if my paralegal can approach with exhibit 195, clip 11. Do you recognize exhibit 195?
I do.
And again, it's your initials and badge on that.
It is.
And is that portion of the interview where you asked her if she'd heard anything said between Charles and Alex prior to the shooting?
Correct.
State will move to admit 195.
Same objection.
Same objection, Your Honor.
195 is admitted.
And if we may publish.
I gotta get to the kids. And so I just went outside and to see if they were in there okay. I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on. And got JJ in the car and he was trying to come in and Tylee was like looking at me.
That's actually the wrong one. Well, play that one, I guess. Let me see, and we'll talk about that one since it's admitted. Okay. Yeah, we'll play it and talk about it.
I gotta get to the kids. And so I just went outside and to see if they were in there okay. I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on. And got JJ in the car and he was trying to come in. And Tylee was like looking at me with like the crazy eyes, like what just happened. And I told her to get in the car and run and take JJ to school. And I just left.
When you came back in and you saw him on the ground, where was your brother? Did you see him where he was at?
Yeah, he was right in front of him.
Okay.
So in exhibit, what we have as 195, is that actually then the portion where she's talking about what she did after as well as what Alex was doing when she went back in there?
Correct.
So she advised you that after she heard this shot, she just left
She did. She went outside.
and then drove off in Charles's rental car?
Correct.
And she told you that when she saw Charles on the floor, Alex was standing in front of him.
Correct.
Did you ask her to describe any distance of how far away?
I did not.
And then if we can approach then with what is code number? I think that is exhibit 194. Is that, again, a portion of this interview? We're talking about the shots, actually.
Correct.
And you watched that previously and initialed it and put your badge number on it.
I did.
State will move to admit 194.
Same objection, Your Honor.
194 is admitted.
Okay, yeah.
He was a professional baseball player.
Okay.
So it wasn't a good idea for Tylee to get out of the house.
Probably not the.
I mean, he played semi-pro
Yeah.
when he was young. But, yeah, and then I was kind of turned around and we were all right there in that room except for the kids had been outside by that time and I heard the gunshot.
Mhm.
And
So you heard the shot? Did you actually see the shot or did you just hear it?
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him and so back around. So I don't know if he went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, so I didn't see the shot, I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground.
Okay.
Okay. So again, that's the portion where she is advising you that she only heard the shot but didn't see the shot.
Correct.
So she's advising you she doesn't know what her brother was doing.
Reasonably, yes.
During this whole interview that you had with Lori Vallow, did she ever tell you that she handed over the phone to Charles?
She did not know.
So during the initial confrontation, when it's just her and Charles and he's demanding her phone, she won't give it back to him.
Correct.
When her daughter comes out and involves herself in this altercation, she wouldn't give him back the phone.
Correct.
And she advised that he's still at that point demanding his phone.
Yes.
And again, he's there to take JJ to school, right?
Right.
And then her brother comes out and again, he's demanding the phone and she still won't give it to him.
Correct.
Did she ever explain to you why she didn't just hand the phone back over?
She did not know.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 286. Have you looked at Exhibit 286 before?
I have.
And is your initials and badge on that?
It is, yes.
And is that a copy of the full interview?
It is, yes.
So it includes whatever conversations you had throughout that, about Charles Vallow and her views on him,
Yes,
and repeatedly that she never gave the phone back to Charles Vallow.
that's right.
State will move to admit 286.
Same objection.
Same objection, Your Honor.
286 is admitted.
No, I did this time. Did Lori Vallow ever call 911?
She did not.
Not playing it. Yeah, never mind. Do you know who called 911?
I believe Alex Cox called 911.
We've discussed that she had multiple cell phones, correct?
Correct.
And so did you later learn that she also had Charles Vallow's cell phone?
I did.
So she has at least 2 cell phones with her, but she did not call 911.
That's correct.
After you interviewed Lori, did you have to get her and Tylee back to where the car was?
I did, yes.
Did you and someone else drive her, Tylee, and Alex Cox back?
Myself and at the time Detective, but now Lieutenant Moffett did.
So can you tell us about that?
So the interviews were concluded and we were going to get them back to the house. The search warrant was still ongoing at the house, but to get them back to get vehicles, they weren't in custody. So I obtained our victim services has a minivan because it just holds a lot of people. And we use the minivan to take everyone back to the scene instead of driving 2 different cars with people. So I drove and Detective Moffett sat in the very back. Tylee was sitting up front with me and Lori and Alex were behind me.
What was Lori's demeanor in the car with her brother and you and Moffett?
She was unaffected, not emotional. The best description I can give is that she chattered the whole way, basically back to the house. Not upset, almost not happy, but just really unaffected by everything that was going on. It was kind of striking.
Is there any acknowledgement about what had happened?
No,
Basically just talking like it was any other day?
that's a good description, yes.
Did you ever hear her talk about or say anything like, oh, I need to let Charles Vallow's sons know that he's dead?
No, not specifically. She had referenced at one point like calling people, but not that she needed to like do additional like death notification.
When you got back to the 5531 South Four Peaks place, did you see Lori, Alex, and Tylee leave in that red Kia SUV?
They did. They left in the rental car.
Okay. What did you do initially after that?
So that was the first time that I came into the house. I came just into basically the threshold first part of that room. Detective Coons and Detective Duncan were finishing the search warrant and they were talking about some of the things that they had found. And there was some initial kind of discussion between us. And then I ultimately left because I had a different case to go work on. So I left to go do something else.
Did you go back to the police station?
I did.
Around 2 or so, did you get a call to see if you could help find Lori or Alex to come back to the house?
Yes. The detectives that were at the scene that were done doing, they were finishing the scene investigation. They were wondering if I could try to get in touch with Lori or Alex to try to get them to come back to the scene, because their intention was to try to do a walkthrough and some additional investigation. So I made a couple phone calls to the number that Lori had provided to me.
So you made more than one call to that 808 number.
I believe two.
Did you leave a message?
I left a message, yes.
After you had called and tried to reach her, what did you do?
I ended up going back to the scene very briefly while they were finishing. And at that point, Alex had come back to the scene. Lori and Tylee were present with that red rental car again. And I was outside and the other detectives were inside finishing up crime scene work.
Did you ever learn from Detective Coons or Duncan that they had searched the house and they couldn't find Charles's cell phone?
When I went back the second time, the detectives on scene, Coons and Duncan, had said that they couldn't find his phone.
And you had interviewed Lori, so you knew that at some point she'd had it, right?
Correct.
And she had, in fact, told you multiple times that she had refused to give it back to Charles, right?
That's correct.
But you had never asked her, do you still have it?
I did not.
So you're at the house, you see Lori and Tylee. Did you go ask her about it?
I did.
So can you tell us about that?
I walked up to where the vehicle had pulled up. Tylee was actually still inside the car, and I asked them if they knew where Charles's phone was. And at that point, they volunteered that they had the phone. I believe Tylee pulled it out of the cup holder to hand to me. And I asked them if they knew what the passcode to the phone was, and both of them were able to give me the passcode, and I took custody of the phone from them.
Did Lori tell you anything about where she found the phone?
I think she said that she found the phone in the car.
Okay. When you were asking her about her now deceased husband's phone that she found in the car, what is her demeanor like when she's interacting with you again here?
It's the same that it's been the whole time. Pretty calm and kind of unaffected by what's going on.
Did it seem odd to you that she said that she found that inside his car when she was talking to you about having it in her hands and refusing to give it to Charles?
It struck me as a little odd, yes.
So they give you the phone and you said that you were able to get the passcode or PIN for it. Did Lori say she knew it as well?
Lori and Tylee.
And what was the passcode?
I believe it was all zeros.
Okay. Did you ever check to see if that would open the phone?
I did not.
Did you later give Charles's phone to be given to Detective McDonald?
I did.
Approach with 245. Do you remember or recognize what Exhibit 245 is?
I do.
And what is that?
So this is evidence item 131035-1, and it's a cell phone in a black case. And then it's kind of common practice, the passcode's on a sticky on the phone.
Is that the phone that was given to you by Tylee with Lori there?
I believe so, yes.
Did you provide that to Officer Allness to then give it to a Detective McDonald?
So Sergeant Ulness, at the time of this, was the sergeant over our computer crime section, which is where Detective McDonald worked. And it's common practice for us to turn over items to them so they can do exams.
And does that phone have the number for this case and other information to indicate to you that it is the phone that you got from Lori Vallow and or Tylee.
It does.
So each case, is there a specific number? Each case has their own DR number or incident number?
So each investigation will have their own DR number, and then our evidence, each item generates its own unique evidence item number. And those numbers are associated specifically with the specific report number.
And does that then tie in specifically to the phone that we've been discussing that belonged to Charles Vallow?
Correct.
The phone that Lori had talked to you about as the whole reason this whole incident occurred.
Right.
The state will move to admit 245.
Any objection?
No objection.
245 is admitted.
Did you later then submit a request to have an examination or extraction done of Charles's cell phone?
Correct.
And then you said use the sticky on the front to let them know how to get into it.
Correct. We'll put it, if we know it, we'll put it in the request, but oftentimes we'll put it directly with the phone also.
I have no other questions for this witness, Your Honor.
All right, Cross.
Detective Inkland, who was the case agent on July 11th, 2018?
That would have been Detective Moffett, who's now Lieutenant Moffett.
Okay. And then when did Detective Duncan when did the switch happen from Detective Moffett to Detective Duncan being the case agent? Do you know?
When Detective Moffett was promoted to Sergeant Moffett, once you're promoted, you go back to patrol as a supervisor. So when you leave the unit, we reassign case officer responsibility to a detective that's currently inside the unit. So if somebody retires or promotes, that case agent responsibility would shift over to someone else.
Okay. Do you know when that was about?
I don't.
Was it like sometime in that year, 2019, or much later?
I don't know.
Okay. You had talked about when you got the call to come and respond to the house on July 11th. About what time was that?
It was probably about 10 or 15 minutes after the initial radio traffic. I just remember I was on the 202 going westbound and my phone rang.
And when you showed up, you had stated that Alex was seated on the curb. Is that correct?
He was the first time I noticed him, yes.
And you also stated that an adult female and Tylee were already across the street when you arrived?
No,
Oh, we weren't there yet.
no.
Okay. How long after you arrived did we arrive?
I don't know when you arrived. I just became aware of you at some point. I did not see you arrive. You were not there when I got there, but at some point you got there and I became aware of you outside.
Okay. But you weren't in the house, correct?
No,
In the morning? So where were you that you didn't see us coming up at that, in between that time?
I was in front of the house.
And was your view obscured by something?
I don't believe so.
So you didn't see us drive up, you just noticed us being there at some point?
Correct.
Okay. And when you first saw us, what were we doing? Were we talking to the officer?
I believe so.
or waiting to talk to the officer?
When I first saw you, Officer Krautheim was standing with you, and it appeared like you were all talking together. I couldn't hear you from where I was at. I just noticed you.
Okay, so you saw him talking to us, but you didn't see us initially come up before when he told us to stay where we were. You didn't see that part.
I just became aware of you standing there.
Okay. And you talked about my demeanor, right? Being ordinary. Is that what you said?
Being ordinary?
You said ordinary, non-emotional, nonchalant.
Correct.
What's your definition of nonchalant?
Pretty almost detached, just calm, doesn't really matter, kind of not extraordinary.
Do you have a degree in psychology?
I do not.
Do you know what a person should act like if they're in a stressful situation?
So there isn't one way to act. There's just behavior that is striking.
Striking behavior.
Correct.
Okay. At some point when you came over to talk to me and my daughter, did we express to you that she needed her medications that were in the house?
I believe so. And that
And what did you instruct us about?
at one point, I advised the detectives that were inside of that request, but that a search warrant was happening inside the house. So we would do our best to facilitate people getting things from the house. But the search warrant's going to take precedence to what's going on.
Right, so basically that it's a crime scene and we can't really enter, but someone would try to get them for her?
Correct.
Okay, and did someone go and get them for her?
At that point, we did not have a search warrant. We weren't going to be entering the house or removing any items from the house. We didn't have legal authority to go in and remove items without a search warrant. So nothing was going to be removed from the house at that point.
But you were aware that she needed her panic attack medicine?
I was a-
Objection as to testifying and asked and answered.
Sustained, you can ask her if she was aware that she needed that medication.
You were aware that she needed her medication?
I was aware you made a request for her medication.
And it would have been non-emotional if I was trying to be calm for my daughter?
I'm going to object to speculation.
Sustained.
Were you being calm?
I believe so.
Was Officer Krautheim being calm?
I think so.
Were the firefighters being calm?
I didn't see the firefighters or have any interaction with them.
Were the other detectives being calm?
I believe so.
The EMS guys were being calm?
Again, I didn't see them and have any interaction with them.
But it was a pretty calm environment that day, was it not?
I don't know if I'd agree with that, but
Well, no one was running around hysterical, right?
correct.
Okay. The information that you received from the briefing, was that from Officer, is it Krautheim? Sorry,
Krautheim.
Krautheim.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Was Officer Krautheim the one that gave you the briefing on what had happened?
So Officer Krautheim and Officer Wisbicki, who Sergeant Wisbicki now, provided information to the detectives and my sergeant that had arrived.
And then who briefed you personally?
So it's a kind of a collective conversation. where the initial information is provided and then we start doing assignments, basically.
Right, so Officer, sorry, say his name one more time.
Krautheim.
Krautheim.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to write that in
I'm
phonetically.
gonna again object
I'm
to
sorry.
you testifying.
So he was wearing a body cam, is that correct? That day? Officer Krautheim.
Correct.
And so was that briefing on body cam?
I don't know.
And you talked about the death notification to me and to Tylee. You said that Tylee and I were in the van. Is that correct?
Correct. When I came over to talk to you.
And who was with you?
My Sergeant Lockwood.
And was Detective Moffat not with you as well?
He was not.
And so you had stated that you had asked me to get out of the van? Is that correct?
I was trying to get you to come. My intention was to get you to come out of the van. And then you made a statement that you were there. You already knew.
What did you say that made me say that I was already there?
I was asking you to step out of the van. And you said, I was there. I already know.
I already know what.
That Charles had died. I was trying not to tell you in front of your daughter.
That would have been nice, but that wasn't the point. How did I know you were coming to give me a death notification?
I'm gonna object to speculation.
Sustained.
Did you notify me that I'm going to give you a death notification? I don't want to do it in front of your daughter? What did you say?
It would be slightly redundant to tell you I was doing a death notification if I didn't want to tell you in front of your daughter.
Why would I say to you, I already know?
Sustained, that's, the form of the question calls for her to speculate about your state of mind.
So did you speak to me giving me a death notification, or was it Lockwood,
Lockwood,
sorry. Who spoke to us
we were both involved in the conversation.
and what was said to us?
You said that you were there and you already knew. And at that point, shortly thereafter, I asked you if you and Tylee would come back to the station to do interviews so I could talk with you.
You asked us if we would come, or you said we're going to go down to the station and interview you?
I asked you if you would come. It was a consensual contact. It was a voluntary interview.
And is this on body cam?
I did not have a body cam at the time, no.
Did Lockwood have a body cam?
He did not. He was assigned to investigations.
So we voluntarily went to the station, is that correct?
Correct?
And you drove, is that correct?
I did.
And it was a 20 or so minute drive.
About that.
And we arrived at the station and you separated us into 2 rooms, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you ask me permission to speak to my minor daughter?
I indicated to you that I wanted to interview both of you and that we would go do the interviews in the Family Advocacy Center.
And what is the protocol for interviewing a minor?
It depends on the circumstances where you're interviewing them.
Okay, and are you a certified forensic interview of children?
I am.
And so would that be something that you would ask the parent if you could interview the minor child?
It depends on the circumstances.
Okay, and did you ask me?
I did not specifically ask your permission.
Did you ask Tylee if she wanted to be interviewed?
I'm gonna object to hearsay.
Well, the question, I'll overrule the objection. The question is, did you ask Tylee, yes or no?
I did at one point ask if I could speak with her.
Did either of us know that we were being videotaped?
I don't know.
Were we told that we were being videotaped?
No.
At that time, when we entered into the rooms, you left Tylee in there alone and came in to interview me. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how long was that interview that you and I had?
I think it's about 35, 40 minutes, maybe a little longer.
And so that whole time, Tylee was in the room by herself,
Correct.
not knowing she was being videoed. Correct.
I don't know if she knew or not.
And without her medication. Correct.
I don't know, but I believe so.
And I was worried about her, if you recall. Is that correct?
Object to relevance.
Sustained.
Do you always wear your gun when you are doing a forensic interview of a child?
The majority of the time now, yes, because my assignment's different. When my assignment was in our family violence unit and I was doing forensic interviews of child victims, then no.
Did you treat us like we were victims that day?
Actually, yes.
And did you think that wearing your gun might be intimidating to a child?
No, given her age, no.
Is that your normal protocol?
An object asked and answered.
She can answer. Overruled.
For which part?
For wearing your gun doing a forensic interview of a child?
So I wasn't doing a DFI of Tylee. I was doing an interview with a witness to a scene. If it was a DFI, it would be different.
How would it be different?
So a dedicated forensic interview of a child is much different. It's structured much different. It's conducted much differently, and they're typically done of victims of very specific allegations. Physical child abuse, sexual child abuse, things along those lines. The interview with Tylee was done basically as a witness interview. I did defer some to almost like a victim status, but her interview wasn't a DFI. It wasn't done as a dedicated forensic interview. She was a witness, a potential witness to a homicide.
How long did you interview Tylee for?
I believe we talked for about similar amount of time, 30, 40 minutes.
At the time, that day on July 11th, did you believe Tylee?
I'm going to object.
Sustained.
With your experience in forensically interviewing children, did you think Tylee's demeanor was genuine that day?
I'm going to object to speculation.
Sustained.
Did you have a reason to think that she might be making something up?
I'm going to object again to speculation.
Sustained.
Did you learn during Tylee's interview?
I'm going to object right there to hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you learn during my interview that Tylee came in with a bat?
I did.
And was that confirmed by Tylee?
And I'm going to object, Your Honor, pretrial ruling
yeah.
hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, can we have a sidebar?
No, that's hearsay. It's sustained.
At the end of our interviews, Detective Inklin, where did you put us?
You stayed in the Family Advocacy Center until we were ready to leave.
And did you put us in a room with a victim's advocate?
I did.
and introduce us to her?
We did.
And we spoke to her.
I believe so, yes.
And then after however long that was, then you came in with my brother Alex. Is that correct?
We met them outside of the Family Advocacy Center, and then we left to go back to the house.
And you stated that I chatted the whole way back. Is that correct?
You did.
It wasn't Tylee and Alex chatting the whole way. It was me specifically.
You mostly.
It wasn't me just looking out the window and them talking to you.
I'm going to object to asked and answered.
You can answer. Overruled. You can answer.
Can you ask it again?
It wasn't Alex and Tylee speaking to you and me just looking out the window the whole way home.
No.
And then when we got back to the house, what happened then?
You, Tylee, and Alex left in the rental car, the little red like SUV, and I spoke briefly with the detectives who were on the scene.
Who told us to leave in the rental car?
I don't recall who told you. I just know that Alex could not take his vehicle because the search warrant was still going and the vehicle was on the curtilage of the property.
Right. So we were told we couldn't take the truck. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And we were told we couldn't take Tylee's Jeep. Is that correct?
Correct. It was in the garage.
And we couldn't take my car because it was in the garage as well.
I believe so.
And so our only alternative, because we couldn't enter the house, is that correct?
Correct.
And that we were told that we could come back later, but not at that time. Is that correct?
At the conclusion of the search warrant, yes.
And so we were told that we could take the rental car because it wasn't behind the police tape. Is that correct?
Correct. It wasn't part of the search warrant.
That we could leave and that we could come back later after we picked up JJ from school. Is that correct?
You could come back, assuming you picked him up from school, yes.
Well, that's not what we were instructed to do.
Objection, again, testifying.
Sustained.
So we left, is that correct? And then you entered the house after that?
You left, correct, and I entered the house after that, correct.
And what did you do inside the house after we left?
I had some brief discussion with the detectives who were on scene and at that point left to go work on another case.
So in the brief discussions that you had with whoever this was, were you briefing them on the events of what had happened up to that point, or?
So Detective Coons and Detective Duncan were present, along with Detective Werther. There was a crime scene technician as well. And they were briefly discussing some of the artifacts that they had found in the search warrant and kind of what they were going to do. And I indicated if I wasn't needed, I was going to go work on other casework.
Okay. And then you left shortly after that?
I did.
About what time do you think that was?
I honestly have no idea.
Do you know what time we got back to the house?
I don't specifically recall, no.
You indicated that when we came back to do for Alex to do the walkthrough, that you realized you didn't have Charles' phone. Is that correct?
They had indicated prior to you coming back that they had not recovered Charles's phone. So when you returned, I asked you and subsequently Tylee about Charles's phone and where it was at.
And did she hand over the phone to you right away, right?
She did. She picked it up out of the cup holder and handed it to me.
And that's where it had been pretty much the whole day since I ran out the door with it.
I'm going to object to speculation and
Sustained.
testifying.
And then you asked us for the code. Is that correct?
I did.
And Tylee gave you the code. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that was about what time?
It was later in the afternoon, but I don't remember what time.
And then what happens to the phone as far as chain of custody? What happened from you taking it from Tylee to where it went next?
So our computer crimes detectives work within the main station where I work. Most of our detectives work out of there. And they do the physical exams and the downloads of the phones, computers, electronic devices there at the station. Our property room is separate. It's about a mile away from the police department. So typically when we have cell phones or devices that need exams, we will immediately deliver the device to the computer crimes section. Their workspace, their cubicles and workspace upstairs is a dedicated locked area. The only people that can get into where their cubicles and exam space are the detectives that work in that area. So it sounds silly. We go up and bang on the door and get in touch with somebody, and we will turn devices over to them. And then in our property section and our report management, we do what's called an evidence continuity sheet. So that shows how items travel from place to place, person to person, like a phone to a computer detective, or like evidence from the property room to the lab or something like that. So we will physically hand over items to the computer crimes detectives. Often cell phones have very time sensitive criteria as well. So we don't typically impound them straight into property. They go straight to a computer crimes detective.
Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Thank you for that. I'm going to backtrack to, from your hands, it goes into a evidence bag?
No, it's usually in a bag. It's not sealed because we hand it over because they're going to do an exam.
So who did you hand it over to them at the station, or did you give it to someone else at the house?
No, it got handed over at the station in their workspace. They typically don't come out to scenes unless we request them. So the majority of the time we're turning evidence over to them at the station or their work area.
Okay, so just so I understand, it went from you to them.
Correct.
So you had it in your hands and delivered it to them at the station that day?
I believe so, yes.
And so according to the grand jury, it was at 3:11 p.m.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Oh, sorry.
The objection sustained.
My understanding was that it was about
Hold on,
3.
hold on.
Objection.
Let's break for the evening recess. Let's have the jurors report and be ready for 10:15 tomorrow morning, 10:15. Please remember the admonition.
All rise for the jury.
Okay, so we're splitting the difference. So it will be 10:15. So that'd be 11:15 for me, plus a half an hour. So 12:45 Mountain Time.
Please be seated. The jury is no longer present. All right, you can't phrase questions as your understanding or what you believe or what you remember. All those are forms of testifying, so you have to be careful how you ask your question. Also, I sustain an objection because of the reference to the grand jury and what was said in the grand jury proceedings. You can use that time and ask the witness, is 3:30 sound right, for example? But let's move on. The reason that I allowed in the various different clips of the defendant's statement over the defendant's, I should say, interview at the police station over the defendant's objection, Rule 106 isn't really applicable in that situation. Rule 106 is intended to complete a statement when only a portion of the statement is offered and it distorts or changes the meaning of the actual statement. And it's really meant for very short statements, not entire interviews or versions of what happened. Additionally, the state has the discretion to only admit certain parts of your statement that are admissions. They're not going to admit statements, nor should they admit statements that are self-serving hearsay. So there's a reason why your interview has been cut up into different pieces. That's just for the record. Let's have everyone ready at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We'll discuss those other motions, give the defendant a chance to meet with her team about those other motions that we talked about this morning. So we'll do that at 10. We'll have the jury here and ready to go at 10:15 to resume with this witness. Anything else from the state,
Here you are.
from the defense?
Yes, we have one item, Your Honor. On Thursday, we were handed this by the state in the morning. It's a new extraction of the devices of Charles Vallow, and it's the gray key that we had requested, but none of them open. So we have a flash drive, and we got it to our expert, and now it's.
Go there.
What?
I have to go see him. He doesn't-
So they're not opening. So I don't know if we need to get a new extraction or if it was tested
Well, I
before it
don't-
was handed over.
I don't know if it's a matter of what program's being used to open it. Do we know? I think we need more information.
Yeah.
We can't utilize it if it's blank.
Well, is
So
Mr. Mr. Dworkin says he can't open it at all?
it's my investigator that can't open it, and then he'll hand it over to Mr.
Why
Dworkin
don't you
as
just
well.
tell me, sir? What's your name for the record?
Jeff White.
All right, what's the problem?
I tried to open it. I had Lonnie on the phone this morning. He's out of town, but he is on his way he's on his way back. He won't be here till probably 6 to 7 o'clock tonight. And I need to go up and see if he's able to extract any information from it.
Are you just trying to click on it and opening it? Or are you opening it with a particular
I
program?
sat with him and we were going over things for about 4 hours this morning.
Okay. I guess, where's the extraction coming from? Who's handing that over to you?
That is the Chandler Police Department handed over the raw data from Gray Key. So it's just raw random data. So I don't know it.
So it's not,
It's not parsed into any sort of way to read.
The reader. That's what I was working with Lonnie.
There is no reader with it. It would have to be then input into a Cellbrite to parse the data. It is the Gray Key raw data.
all right.
And was trying to do that this morning, and that's what I spent 4 hours doing this morning.
I think unless you have a Cellbrite account, you're not going to be able to open that.
I have two different kinds of, I have the old version and the new version of Cellbrite, and I couldn't get them to open. The Cellbrite that they gave us is an old version, the 7.2, I think it is. And I think
They gave us? We
I'm
didn't
sorry?
give you Cellbrite.
it's on the.
That's a UFED reader. That's not Cellbrite.
The Cellbrite is on the Discovery, is on the,
With that,
I'm sorry?
with the Discovery we just handed over,
With the Discovery that was handed over before, it's downloaded onto my computer.
I think that's right.
All right.
With the FDRs.
I'm not sure that
I
that's
get two
correct.
different
I
ones.
think that it would need to go to Mr. Dworkin to review.
Is there someone at the police department that Mr. Dworkin can maybe get on a call with to try to figure out what the disconnect is here?
Well, he should be, hopefully, in the next hour and 40 minutes, he'll be back home.
I guess if he has a problem, I mean, obviously I have multiple problems with the fact that we're still talking about an expert that has been presumptively precluded.
Right.
While the state is nearing ending its case in chief.
I
That being
guess
said,
in theory, it could be for the next trial, but I don't know that that's going to happen either.
So I guess I would need to know first if that's actually a problem for Mr. Dworkin or not. And then if so, we would have to try to, perhaps he could explain why it's a problem.
I guess, is there someone Mr. Dworkin a contact point to try to figure out why, if it's a problem on this end versus that end?
I don't have anyone off the top of my head. My case agent is out ill today, so I couldn't tell you. who that would be.
Okay.
Your Honor, she had an expert come to testify this about the gray key. I don't know if he's a person that was on the stand on Thursday that we could ask about this. I don't know if he made the extractions and gave them to the prosecution.
I don't know if that's technically an extraction as opposed to the raw data.
That is just the raw data.
I'm still trying to figure out, is it a problem with what's been disclosed or is it a problem with who's trying to open it, the correct programs? I guess get with Mr. Dworkin later tonight and see if it can be resolved. If not, I'm going to have to figure out who he needs to contact or try to problem solve tomorrow sometime.
We'll let you know in the morning, Your Honor.
But again, this is unlikely to be an issue for this trial, but it could be something for the next trial. All right, we'll be at recess. I wish I had a better resolution, but I don't right now.
Okay.
I'm traveling.
I can't believe that they still don't have the data to Dworkins after all of that. Trina K was absolutely right. The prosecution expects to wrap up the case in chief against Lori on Thursday, and Lori should be ready to hit the ground running, and she's not, and her her witness isn't necessarily even cleared to testify, and there won't be time for him to make a report on what he finds and to submit it to the prosecution so that they can have their experts go over it and rebut it and so forth. This is just beyond ridiculous. Meanwhile, one interesting thing that happened, my brother came in before he left and told me that he had jury duty and he was supposed to go into a case up in Park City for questioning, but that they had postponed the trial indefinitely. So my little brother was supposed to be in the jury pool for Corey Richens. I'm just going, oh man, I sure wish I could have, he would have been on the jury and I could have picked his brain afterwards. Oh, that's just too funny. So, okay, so the jury is showing up 15 minutes after they start, so it's going to be an 11 a.m. Mountain start time. I think. Is that right? Let me look. Okay, 11 a.m. Haven't we been starting at noon? Or am I just hallucinating? Anyway, see you tomorrow. What is Cellbrite? Cellbrite is the system for the program for getting data off of telephones. And it would have been fun I could have written a book with my brother on the Corey Richens case because he could have told me all about the jury deliberations if he had been chosen as a juror. But oh man, that would have been crazy. He's got jury duty for the end of the month, but I doubt that they will resolve the matter and have a new trial date before the end of the month. So, so much for that. Okay, have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.